KG and Ringy Quick Hitter. DIGSTOCK. DIGSTOCK 2021 was an incredible cornucopia of coins, cans, and corn. Yes, cobs of corn. But that's not all. Beautiful fall weather welcomed us to upstate New York, and the magnificent fall leaf color display made for the perfect backdrop to a most excellent event. Oh, and by the way, it wasn't lost on me that this DIGSTOCK video is quick hitter number 69, and that the original Woodstock took place up here in, that's right, 1969. That sort of weird coincidental karma led to lots of peace and love in the detecting fields, as you'll see later on. But let's get back on track. We took the usual ferry ride from Vermont over to Chazy and geared up for several days of exploration. It didn't take long before the finds started to roll in at event headquarters, including a couple of 2 reals and a full-on 8 real. Team Garrett started a little slower.
Giant washer. Aluminum.
But eventually things really picked up for our whole group, and once we got rolling, it was non-stop nectar. Lots of Canadian coins turned up, as you might expect being up that far north. KG and I found a handful of pennies. Steve got an 1893 Canadian large cent. Both Steve and Richie landed a couple of nice old dimes dating back to 1911, and Gary got a quarter from 1953. Canadian silver in the American pock. Indian heads, barbers, buffaloes, and Wheaties were also part of the mix, as you might expect. And then we got into the good stuff. KG turned up this US large cent, and Maddie found her first ever largie using an Apex, 1840s. Richie joined in the old copper frenzy with a largie of his own and a really old US half cent. But it wasn't all coins. We were in War of 1812 territory, and on one of our private hunt days, we got into some actual skirmish finds. Pretty exciting to see musket balls emerge from the soil used as a battlefield 200 years ago. I ended up with 3 round balls at one site and was pretty happy with that. That's a fired round ball from the War of 1812.
I mean, Ringy's got some fired musket balls. I got a giant large cent. I got a buffalo nickel. I could have a War of 1812 button there. We'll have to clean that up and look at that. Yeah, I mean, that's some cool stuff. An old spoon. Maybe a man from the War of 1812 settled down here for a little bite, and he was a giant man. Look into the size of that spoon.
Barely get that in your mouth. We had lunch right there. Maybe they had their lunch right here, and here you go.
Maybe it was their last lunch.
Yum, 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 yum. Gary turned in a really cool lock, as well as a belt buckle that he had to gift to Richie for obvious reasons. Pocket knives, horse tack, brass buckles, and plumbing fixtures appeared on our finds table, and I was thrilled to contribute this lovely bunghole spigot. I dug up a couple of Civil War age button backs, but unfortunately the fronts were nowhere to be found. KG went big with this old blob of metal, and he'll be happy to tell you all about it.
This is an antique iron. I mean, not a plug-in iron. You would stick this baby on the stove, you'd warm it up, and you would iron your clothes. Perhaps you had a hot date that night, so you would talk your mom into warming up the iron, pressing the shirt so that you could go out looking hot and sexy so you could find a mate, settle down, buy a farm, and, you know, maybe plant corn or something.
KG also came up with this heavy weirdie that we thought might have been part of a toy.
Old toy gun barrel.
But it looked to me like a real .22 barrel of some kind. Not sure what that ended up being, but it was definitely interesting. Good work, Cage. The seated hunts for prize tokens and silver were of course very entertaining. There were Canadian largies, mercs, silver rosies, halves, old buttons, and more to be found out there in the tall grass.
Silver dime in the pock.
Always a good time. And look at this, a retro Garrett from way back still locating the silver. How cool is that? Of course, the GPP was on call in the New York area and was tasked with walking a beat in the DIGSTOCK hunt fields.
Bring you here, we're out doing prize patrol. It's the Garrett prize patrol. If you're out in the field, you're detecting, doesn't matter whether it's a seated hunt or the natural hunts, we're out here finding Garrett users and giving them free unicorn babies.
As usual, box loads of Garrett gear and prizes were doled out to unsuspecting Garrett users. Hats, shirts, diggers, pro pointers, and more.
Garrett prize patrol.
We always find something. Well, thank you.
Here, here's the gloves.
Hey, he might, I think his head's cold.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks, guys.
Look how tall this thing is, too.
He appears a lot smarter on TV than he does in real life.
Prize Patrol is here.
Thank you. I love your guys' videos. You have a lot of energy.
Yeah.
High energy.
What's up?
You Garrett Prize Patrol.
Garrett Prize
How
Patrol.
are you?
Can you get that?
What?
Give him some
Oh,
blood.
cool, man. I picked them all up.
Oh,
That's
awesome.
cool, man. Guess what I'm going to do with this? Watch this. Look, you guys are from TV. Yeah, man. Oh, he's watched the show. Yeah, that's cool.
Oh yeah,
man.
gold coin.
Get out of town! That's awesome!
And we also got to meet the winner of the Apex given out on the Runnin' and Gunnin' podcast. She was one happy camper. And one of the podcast's Fantastic Finds contest winners was there with his winning entry for Show and Tell. Amazing clump of awesomeness featuring a barber half. How would you like to dig that up? A lot of the usual suspects were there this year. Ran into Dig Dug at the local Applebee's on the first night, and our buddy Pete was there as well. He's smart and knows a lot about stuff and things. The aforementioned peace and love was in full bloom for the most part, but there was a brief overnight wind event that blew the Garrett tent across a field. Shortly thereafter, however, tragedy was avoided and love and harmony was restored as several crews helped to recover and rebuild it. The post-event crew party was probably not as wild as the police visits at the meet and greet last time we were up here, but it was a healthy bit of fun, as you can plainly see. Nug was totally out of control and had to be airlifted to Buffalo for emergency treatment. Waking up the next morning, we were treated to the usual phone picture invasions and pancake door handles. Some people are just plain rude. Where do they learn this behavior? Civilized society is definitely on the wane, except for the awesome folks that gave us all these lovely gifts. They are good humans for sure. We like those people.
If you dare, come in if you dare. Come on. More later. After most had called it quits on the last day, Steve and I kept after it and hit a little sector of nectar in one corner of a well-used field. It was near a place where I finally produced my first bit of silver earlier in the day with this spoon or fork handle, made in England probably in the late 1800s. Haven't checked into the hallmarks yet, but I know we can date it. A dozen or so Wheaties and nickels and such popped up out there, and as the sun was making its final dive toward the horizon, we dug a couple of silver quarters within minutes of each other. Steve found an eagle button under his quarter in the same hole, which was kind of random and cool, and I was happy to find this life change in 1961 Washington. Not super old, but I'll take it. Nice end to a fun set of hunts.
already gearing up for next year with a whole slate of newly scheduled events, including FH8 in February in Florida, where we'll be feeling fine and frolicking in the fjords. Sorry, couldn't think of anything else that started with F. Well, that's all I got. It'll have to do. Check the DIGGINTV.com event schedule for all the upcoming events and news, and have a great end to your 2021 digging season. Spader Alligator, Ringy out.
Quick hitter.
We gotta drop stuff off at the Garrett
brought
tent
the beer and the water.
soon. Otherwise, we'll get in trouble and flogged.
I'm not awake yet. I
see
don't
that.
want to be a part of this.
Me and the Ringy.